Happy holidays, and thank you for being here. Holidays are such a special time, and that calls for special recipes. I have a great one for you today. I have been making this recipe for many years at every holiday for my family. Today we are making my holiday dressing recipe. This recipe has several steps, so let's see what we're going to need. Now, since I make my own bread cubes, that is the first step today. Here are some of the ingredients that we're going to use to make the bread cubes. We need buttermilk, some yellow cornmeal, baking powder, baking soda, some oil, 3 eggs, and a loaf of French bread. Now, I picked this up at Walmart, but you could make your own if you wanted to. And by the way, this cornbread that we're going to make, it's delicious just by itself. So if you're looking for a great cornbread recipe, this one is it. All right, I've got my cast iron skillet, and I'm going to place 2 tablespoons of my oil in my pan. And I'm going to pop that in the oven for a few minutes. I've got my oven set to 450. All right, I've got a large bowl, and I've got all my ingredients ready to go. Now in my bowl, I'm placing 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk. To this, I'm adding 3 beaten eggs, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. I'm going to whisk that up. Now to this, I'm going to add my hot oil from my pan, and then I'm going to continue whisking that up. Once I have that mixed up really well, I'm going to start adding in my cornmeal. I'm going to slowly add in 1 1/4 cups of yellow cornmeal. Once this is all mixed up and well incorporated, I'm going to pour it into my cast iron skillet. I'll pour this into my pan. Our oven is preheated to 450 degrees. I'm going to set this for 15 minutes, and I'm going to check it. It may be longer according to your oven. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes, and I'm going to check on my cornbread. See if it's done. And it is done. When the knife comes out clean, it is done. Now, depending on your oven, anywhere from 15 to 16 minutes. Now, I'm taking a knife to run around the edges of the pan to loosen up the cornbread. This helps it easily come out of the pan. I've turned the cornbread out onto a cookie sheet to cool. You could also place it on a wire rack. Make sure it cools completely. Now, once the bread has cooled completely, I'm going to place it on a cutting board. All right, I'm going to start cutting my little bread cubes. I'm cutting about 3/4 of an inch strips all the way down the bread, all the way across. I'm turning it, and then I'm going to do the same thing all the way across. I'm cutting about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch across the bread. Now, once I have it all sliced, I'm going to look at the pieces, and if they're too long, I'm going to cut them in half. I've also got a large pan ready, and I've got some parchment paper over the top of it, and I'm going to start placing these on top of the parchment paper. These are done. I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to work on my French bread cubes. I'm cutting 3/4 of an inch slices, at least 9 or 10. I'm going to do the same thing by cutting these crossways, and then I'm going to cut them into about 3/4 inch cubes. They don't have to be perfectly square. Once I slice and then I cut them, I'm making sure that if there's long pieces, I go back in and then I cut those in half. I have a separate pan for the French bread cubes, and I have parchment paper on it. I'm going to start putting some of these on top of this. My next pan is done. I'm giving them a check to make sure that I have cut them all small enough. I'm setting my oven for 325. I don't want them to get done too fast. I'm placing these in the oven, one on the top shelf and one on the next one down. And then I'm going to switch them in between cooking. I've got this on 15. It's been about 8 minutes, and I'm going to pull these out and check on them. And then I'm going to move the cornbread ones to the bottom and the other ones to the top. I'm also going to toss these around and flip them. It took about 22 minutes on my French bread cubes, and then the cornbread cubes took another 5. I had to put them back in there to get them light brown. Now I'm going to let these cool completely, and then I'm placing them into a large bowl. With this step, we need a few ingredients. I have all of my cubed bread in a large bowl set aside. Now you can make these a day ahead of time to save some time. Here are some of the things that we need. We need bacon, salt, butter, eggs, mushrooms, some chicken broth. I like the low sodium, black pepper. We need thyme and rubbed sage. We need celery and some leeks. Leeks are from the same family as onions, but they are milder and sweeter. I bought 2 bunches because I use the leftover leeks to put in soup, but 1 bunch will be enough, and that should be about 3 leeks. Now I like to get all my chopping done first, and I'll go ahead and do the bacon and have that all crisped up before we start on the rest of this. Okay, I've got my bacon on here. I've put my whole package on here, but I'm not going to use all this. I'm going to use about 8 to 10 slices. I always make extra because my husband always steals one. My bacon is nice and crispy. I'm going to set that aside and let it cool. Leeks are full of sand, so I'm going to give them a really good wash, and then when I slice them, I'll wash them again. Be sure to check in between the leaves because there's a lot of sand in there. Prior to washing, you can cut off the dark green part. All right, my bacon's good and cooled. I'm going to break it into about an inch piece. I have about 9 to 10 pieces here. The bacon is something that could be done the day before and refrigerated. I'm going to place these in a bowl and I'm going to set them aside. And I'm going to slice them about like this. I slice down the leek all the way down till I reach the dark green part. I'm only using the white and the light green parts of the leek. Depending on the size of your leeks, since the sizes vary, you should have 2.5 to 3 cups of sliced leeks when you're finished. Now I'm going to wash these again and make sure that I get all the sand off of them. We are going to need 2 cups of celery sliced. For my mushrooms, I give them a quick rinse. Okay, we're going to slice our 8-ounce box of mushrooms about this thickness. And we're going to start out our skillet on medium heat. And I have 2 tablespoons of butter in here. So I'm going to let that melt. My butter is melted and I'm adding in my celery. Next I'm adding in my leeks. And then we're going to cook these until they're nice and tender. Probably like 6 or 7 minutes. Ooh, these smell so good. All right. These look pretty good. Now I'm adding in 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1½ tablespoons of rubbed sage, and 3 teaspoons of dried thyme. Ooh, this smells good. This is done. I'm going to add this to my bread cubes. Now I'm going to mix these up really well. I definitely need a larger bowl. That's better. After I mix this up well, I'm going to work on my mushrooms. I'm going to use that same skillet. I didn't wash it. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter. I've got this on medium and I'm adding in my mushrooms. I'm only going to saute this for a minute or 2 until it absorbs the butter. They don't have to be cooked done through. I don't want them to release their own water. Looks like these are done. And we're going to toss those around so we get everything all combined. Ooh, this smells so good. All right, I'm going to set this aside. All right, now time for the bacon. All right, I'm going to set this aside. Okay, I have a large bowl, and I'm adding in my 3 beaten eggs. And I've got my chicken broth. I'm going to use 3 cups. Okay, that's 3 cups. Pour it back in here. I'm going to pour this slowly over my mixture. And I'm going to toss it as I go. To make sure I get it coated well. Now I like a moist stuffing. If you like it more dry, then you may want to use just a little bit less. But it's so good. Now if this still isn't moist enough for you, I'll show you what we can do. We can go ahead and put it in a pan. Okay, let me grab my pan. I'm going to spray the bottom and the sides with Pam. Now if you want to grease it with something else, go right ahead. this is a pretty big pan I have this in. That's at least 4 quarts. I'm going to spread it out evenly. Now, if you still feel like it needs a little bit more moisture, what I do is I add another half a cup, another half a cup, and then I slowly go over the top. You don't have to do this. It's just something I do. Adds a little bit more moisture to it. I wouldn't put much more than a half a cup, if that much. Okay. I'm setting my temperature to 325. I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes. And I'm going to check it after 30. It's been 30 minutes and I'm going to check on it. I'm making sure that it's not getting overly brown around the edges. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Hey, it's looking good. I'm popping it back into the oven for another 15 minutes for a total of 45 minutes. It looks and smells delicious. Time to serve this up. I'm going to cut just a little piece. Here's our delicious holiday dressing. Time for a taste test. Oh my gosh, that's so good. So good. Delicious. This dressing has such a fantastic flavor. It's another one of those dishes that gets even better the next day, and we love leftovers at my house. I make this special dressing at every holiday. My family loves it. If you want to save yourself some time on the day you're going to serve this dish, just prepare the bread cubes the day before and be sure they have cooled completely. Then store them in an airtight container. Do the chopping the day before and store them in the refrigerator for the day of the dinner. I hope you enjoy this dish. Be sure to stay tuned to my next video, which is my crowning jewel for our holiday table. Check out some of the other videos on my channel and on my holiday food series. I have many more recipes coming up. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.